I kind of wanted to talk about how I evolved into sort of being a collector of nice things. So I talked about how before I got into boot collecting about 5 years ago, but one thing I don't talk about too much, and partly because I kind of got out of it, is that I actually used to be a watch collector. I got my start in watch collecting. When I was a kid, my family, they used to own a jewelry store. And so I grew up with sort of this fascination with timepieces. I was about 22 years old, 23 years old. I had just moved to Hawaii, and there was a Tourneau shop right by my apartment. Tourneau is this higher end Swiss watch shop. Well, I would go in there and I would drool, but there was no way I was going to be able to afford any of the new stuff. But I ended up getting an amazing deal on this Omega Speedmaster. So this was my first step into nicer things. Bought that back in 2008. Almost 10 years ago today. The one thing that I noticed that allowed me to use it as sort of a bargaining piece, I didn't know what I was doing, but I don't know if you could see the scuffing there. Well, there's some scuffing on that. So what happened was I went to the pre-owned section. The pre-owned basically means the used watches. I did not know what I was looking at. I did not know what I was doing. I didn't have a smartphone, so I couldn't Google anything. All I knew was that I saw this thing and that I fell in love with it. I didn't know why. There were other watches in there. There were Rolexes, there were a lot of things in there. And not knowing what I was doing, I took it out and I looked at it. I told the lady, you know, you knock 10% off that price and I'll take it. And so she went into the back for about, I want to say 20 minutes, and came out with her manager, and her manager's holding it and he's looking at it. They're talking back and forth. I'm like, come on. So he comes up and he's like, you know what a good deal you're getting on this, right? And I was like, oh yeah, of course. Of course I know what I'm doing here. I had no idea. At first I was like, what the hell am I doing? But then I went and I Googled the actual price for a brand new one of these, and I instantly felt better about what I had just done because I realized that, you know, at full price these go for quite a bit more. This has been a really meaningful timepiece for me, but collecting watches would basically occupy most of my brain for the next, I want to say, about 5 years. I don't have a huge collection of Swiss watches. It just turned out to not be a very practical hobby to continue. You know, the watch for me, that was my start, and it'll always be special to me. I remember after I bought this, I had it on my wrist. I almost cried. I was just looking at how beautiful it was in the sunlight with the sky reflecting off of it, and I just remember thinking, you know, this is just such a beautiful timepiece, such a beautiful moment, you know, to have a real automatic Swiss-made timepiece on my wrist. A lot of people think it's materialism. I think it's deeper than materialism, you know, because the salesperson was talking to me about the Omega Speedmaster, how basically the Moon watch, which is not this exact version, but the Moon watch was selected by NASA. NASA did all these rigorous tests on different brands, Breitling, Rolex, Bulova, Omega. Omega ended up making the cut. Omega turned out to be the most durable under all the different pressure conditions and all the different stress tests that they put the watches under. Omega held up the best, and so that's why that was selected to go to the moon. I'm very proud to own one of these. I recognize the heritage and the history behind it. Had it for 10 years and have not even needed to service it yet, which is amazing. So this has really held up just phenomenally. If you're considering, you know, buying a timepiece, you know, one timepiece for your whole life, this is definitely a good option, I would say. Whenever I meet somebody with an Omega on, it's like, you know, instant friendship, you know, because it's like we have a bond, something to bond over. And I have to say, this is the most functional chronometer out of all my watches. This disc up here is keeping track of my minutes. This counts the hours of the chronometer. None of my other watches have that. So you can tell how long you've had your chronometer going for, which I really find that very functional. So if you need to time anything up to 12 hours, guess what? The Speedmaster is your best friend. Like I said, I haven't had it serviced, and this thing just runs, and it is just accurate as all get out. I can't say enough good things about it. Well, it's really a tool, if you think about it. It's a really good tool. And in the age of smartphones and stuff, I find this all the more valuable to have in your arsenal. I always tell my friends, you know, my nerd friends, hey, if an EMP blast went off, you know, an electromagnetic pulse blast went off, your watch would still work. If you had a Speedmaster, your iPhone would break, but your your Omega would still work, but they don't listen to me. They don't care. But yeah, so this is fully mechanical. Again, not a single electron is flowing through this. Well, there probably is, but none that power the watch. One thing that I always hear people say is, they'll ask, oh, so is that kinetic? That's one thing that I'm sure all you watch enthusiasts out there have heard. So no, this is not a kinetic watch. I'm gonna have to get on my soapbox for a second here. Kinetic watches are actually quartz watches. Kinetic watches are actually battery-powered watches. So they're still electronic, but they charge by the movement of your hand. I get the confusion, but that commercial from the 90s really screwed up American understanding of what a mechanical watch is actually supposed to be. A mechanical watch is made of all nuts and bolts. As you wear it on your wrist and you go through your day, the spring in there winds, and that spring is what gives power to the watch. A Swiss-rated chronometer is supposed to be rated to within 5 seconds of accuracy, plus or minus per day. So that little guy back there looks like a seahorse. It says Speedmaster there. That's actually called the hippocampus. The name originates from Greek, so the more common name for it is the seahorse. It's a mythological creature coming from both the Phoenician and Greek mythology. It was a creature of two natures, having the head and upper body of a horse, and the lower body is a serpentine tail of a fish. What the ancients believed was that these creatures were the adult form of the small fish called the seahorse. They thought the seahorses were just the baby versions. The god of the sea, Poseidon, who was also the god of horses, was the one driving a sea chariot with 2 or 4 seahorses. Because of its multiple meanings, the seahorse is still used to represent the values of a brand or the brand's products, and to also offer protection. It was believed to be a very elegant and mysterious animal. Oh, that's cool. That is the sapphire crystal, completely scratch-free. I am not worried about scuffing this on anything because I just know that it's not gonna scratch. I tell people that this is over 10 years and they just can't believe it because it looks brand new. This just looks so good with a suit. Oh, it looks so professional. There's sort of like a depth to Swiss watches that there's a quality that they exhibit that other watches just don't have. It's hard to really put your finger on it. I think a lot of it has to do with the sapphire crystal. Like, cause I could see that from across the room and tell that it's special. Like when I look at it in the mirror and when I look at it in different lights, you can see through it almost. It's got a clarity and like a presence about it that I really love, and I've noticed it for a long time, ever since I got it. It's something that you don't recognize till you get one and you start living your life with it and you look at it in different lights and different settings. And believe me, when I still just gaze at this thing, I just drool over it still after having it for 10 years. This is just a tremendous piece. This isn't like an advanced collector's piece, but this is definitely something dear to my heart. When I first bought this, I would actually sleep with it on. And one thing that I noticed, sleeping with this underneath my pillow, I could hear it. I could hear its heartbeat that you can't hear unless it's almost right up against your ear. And I remember one night, the ticking of it actually woke me up because it was so close to my ear that it literally, the heartbeat of the watch woke me up. It just tells you that this thing's alive. You know, this thing is not an inanimate object. Well, it is, but it's got a soul to it. You know, it just reminds you that there's something going on here that's deeper than just material possession. So, I just thought that I would kind of read off the Omega site a little bit, because if you're interested in researching it, there's no better introduction than to actually go to the Omega site itself. Omega outdid themselves on really selling this thing. So it says, for over a half century, the Speedmaster has witnessed events that have tested the limits of physical endurance and human courage, including the first manned lunar landing in July of 1969, and every one of NASA's piloted missions since March of 1965. That's pretty monumental. I love things with a story. This clearly has the coolest story of any piece that you can collect. Not just timepiece, but this is a cooler story than the Indie Boot. This is a cooler story than anything. You know, this was the watch the first watch ever used on the moon. I mean, there's no better story than that. They say that this is the world's most famous chronograph, and I do agree. This has got to be one of the most iconic chronographs in the world. Has a unique place in the history of space exploration as the only piece of equipment used in all of NASA's piloted space missions from Gemini to the current International Space Station program. When Buzz Aldrin stepped on the lunar surface in 1969, he was wearing a Speedmaster Professional, the chronograph that has been known as the Moon Watch ever since. That's where it got the name, Moon Watch. Though, once again, this is not the Moon Watch. This is a standard Speedmaster Professional. The Moon Watch has a little bit of a different look, but it's close. It talks about the black dial and the tachymeter scale. It's a 42 millimeter chronograph that was designed to stand out. The indexes and central hour and minute hands are coated in super luminova. A Hesselite crystal protects the dial enhanced with a 30-minute recorder, 12-hour recorder, and a small second subdial. Okay, so that's what I talked about before with the chronometer. Basically, the stopwatch. Here's the Omega Speedmaster in the dark. I just shined my flashlight on it for a few seconds so you can see the lume going on there. I got the chronometer going too. You can see that ticking away. Yeah, pretty good lume on that. Can tell you the time in the black of night. I love it. And then this part talks about the movement a little bit, which is something that always fascinates me. Since its introduction in 1957, the Speedmaster has been characterized by its precision, readability, and robustness. Until 1968, it was powered by the caliber 321, which was later changed to a caliber 861. This was replaced with an enhanced version when Omega introduced a high-grade rhodium-plated finish on the movement, resulting in caliber 1861 and the more embellished 1863. Both are hand-wound. Today, the timepiece is powered virtually by the same hand-wound movements that powered the timepieces that NASA's astronauts wore on the moon. And that's true. So not only do you wind the spring through your wrist's movements, but also you can take the winder here and just wind that. I could tell by the friction that mine does not need to be wound at all. I've been wearing this pretty much for a month now. I just take it off to sleep, really. And that's kind of how I do with my watches. I cycle through them. I stopped wearing them rotating them in and out every day, and instead I pick a watch and I wear it for about a month, and then I'll change it out for another one. Just because that's kind of how I feel like doing it now. It gives me real time with the watch. I feel like they're more important than just swap out accessories to swap out every day. That's my philosophy. Like I said, I used to be the other way, but my thoughts and philosophies change constantly on this stuff. I'll talk a little bit about what Wikipedia has to say about this. So what I find really interesting is reading about the qualification and the stress tests that the Speedmaster went through during the testing phase that NASA put these through. It's really fascinating, just the punishment that these things can take. You know, people often think about expensive things as being delicate. Let me read to you what this had to go through. Then maybe you'll have a better appreciation for what a Swiss watch can handle. So this had to handle high temperature, 48 hours at 160 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 2 days at 160 degrees, basically being baked, followed by 30 minutes at 200 degrees Fahrenheit. So yeah, basically throw that in low heat in the oven for a couple of days. Let's see, low temperature for 4 hours at 0 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's well under freezing for 4 hours, and still working, mind you. You know, I'm pretty sure a human would die in 4 hours at that. Temperature cycling in a near vacuum. 15 cycles of heating to 160 degrees Fahrenheit for 45 minutes, followed by cooling to 0 degrees Fahrenheit for 45 minutes. So this went through shock tests of 40 Gs, shocks from different directions. So basically 40 times the weight of the Earth's gravity. That would kill somebody. Linear acceleration,
acoustic noise 30 minutes at 130 decibels. The evaluation concluded in March of 1965 with the selection of the Speedmaster, which survived the tests while remaining largely within 5 seconds per day accuracy. That's just crazy. This is the only chronograph rated to withstand EVA. EVA is extra vehicular activity. So basically, it's a spacewalk. So you can take this thing out into space and it will keep working. Turn a normal organism inside out. This Speedmaster will continue to work in the vacuum of space. As long as it's on somebody's wrist, of course. Yeah, I hope that gives a little appreciation. Again, I don't want to go into all the really technical details, just because I know that there's a lot of Speedmaster reviews out there already. I really kind of wanted to give a more personal review of my Speedmaster and just talk about how amazing it's been and how much I've enjoyed it and how much I still to this day enjoy it. I think this truly lives up to its name, and if I had to buy this again, I would. Hands down. This is, I don't like to pick a favorite watch, but this is definitely in the running. This is truly an iconic piece. If you were going to buy one timepiece and invest a good amount of money into a timepiece, you have my recommendation on the Speedmaster for sure, for sure. So anyways, this concludes my review. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I did this thing justice. I am on Instagram. You could follow me. I oftentimes do post pictures of my watches on there. It's not all boots for me. I do post some watch pictures as well. And thanks a lot, and I'll see you in my next review.